save yourself from getting sick.
Just waiting on Facebook to load here. Okay. All right. What's up, everyone? Jeremy Majors here with Majors Academy Dog Training, and we are now live on Facebook and YouTube. So, this is Dog Behavior Q&A, our weekly show. We just came back from a little getaway, a little vacation, but we are back and we are ready to serve the people. So if you have any questions about dog behavior or anything that involves dogs, let's start a conversation. You guys who are asking live or watching live have the priority. I've got questions via email and other social media outlets that I'll be answering, but feel free to ask as many questions as you like. All right, let's get started. All right, Jessica asked, trying to find a way to correct leash aggression / anxiety with dogs who pass by in vehicles. We do use an e-collar, but I found it can amp up our boy even more. Also use a prong collar, however, when he sees it coming, he runs away and tries to hide. Then once it's on, he starts attacking my feet. I've heard you mention the doggy don't. I've done some research and am wondering if this may help. If so, would it be used in conjunction with the e-collar? Okay, that's a great question. Excuse me. Well, first of all, what you need to concentrate on is how to really recondition the dog to the e-collar. The e-collar or any tool that you use is not solely for punishment. And it seems like you've used the e-collar and prong collar as a form of punishment because the dog is reacting in a negative way, whether he's trying to avoid the prong collar or gets more amped up with the e-collar. The key is to recondition your dog with the e-collar is to proof commands that the dog already knows. For example, can your dog lay down via e-collar, low level? And are you using your voice in conjunction with the e-collar correction or the prong collar correction? The voice and your authority trumps all of that. You will get no reaction out of the dog via e-collar or prong collar if you are using your voice along with it. Sure, and Remy's a difficult dog, but you may have to go back to basics. So whenever there's a dog that comes to me that's negatively reacting to the e-collar, then you just use the prong collar a few times and reteach the dog what you want. So in the car, I would have the dog lay down. I wouldn't worry about correcting the dog solely with the e-collar. I would tell the dog down. Okay, and then I would work to the level at which works, and that depends on how he reacts. So you may have to use both. You may have to use leash pressure and the e-collar pressure so that you can get the dog to realize that what you want is the dog to lay down. Okay, and that'll go away. The way that you, again, recondition or move away from having the dog think negatively of any tool is to have more leadership and voice through you. I've done that with tons of dogs. Tons of dogs come to me and they are collar smart. Excuse me. So try and go back to basics. Use your other tools. The key is, again, what you want trumps all. If down means down, then it doesn't matter what tool you use, and you want to portray that to the dog. All right. No, I think you need to work through. I don't think you need the doggy don't. I think you need to work through those issues first, because you can't just keep, you don't want to keep moving on from tool to tool to tool. That's not the issue. The real issue is that he's got to have more of the basics with the e-collar to help him go through, the thinking that amping up is not going to work, and avoiding the prong collar is not going to work. And there's no reason to do so if you're, using it the right way. So, if you have any more trouble, maybe we can help you further with that. But use the tools that work. The first, biggest, and most important tool is you, and then everything else comes after that. Okay. Thanks for your question. Okay. Next question. Why are our 2 dogs obsessed with eating snow? They will die for the snow rather than their water. Is it okay for them? Thanks. Yeah, Chris, I think that's okay. I haven't heard or seen any dogs that have gotten sick from eating snow. So my dogs do it, and I don't really stop them because it's something that they seem to enjoy. So there we go. I hope that helps. Okay, moving on. All right. Let's see. Hello, do you work with 2 dogs at a time? My sister recently moved, and her dog and the other dog do not like each other. Her dog becomes violent towards her just at random times. Would you be able to help train to live together? Yes. First and foremost, I think sometimes people are too hard on themselves when it comes to trying to get dogs to get along. Let's just put it like this. Let's not make it that hard. You want to be able to when you decide to get another dog, and this has little to do with your question, but I'll circle back. But when you want to select another dog to be in your pack, you want to try and go for the opposite temperament, size, and gender, or sex, that your dog that you're currently living with, because it'll maximize the ability for them to get along. Even age makes a difference, and breed makes a difference. Same breeds get along with the same breeds more times than not. The 2 dogs, the dog combination that I find the most, that are the hardest to get along, is 2 females that are around the same age. Those are probably the calls that I get the most when it comes to dogs that are fighting. Now, that being said, you can get 2 dogs to get along. You may have to separate yourself from the one that you currently live with in order for your dog to accept change. And so, again, sometimes what happens is the dog that you currently live with, when you bring in a new dog, they get a little territorial, a little jealous, and that's when aggression starts to come out at random times, because they're still trying to figure things out between the 2. But all dogs can coexist. Okay, I mean, it's not like 2 dogs can't work it out. They can. Some dogs will take, some combinations of dogs or packs will take some time to work things out. But you want them to be also as open as possible to accepting each other's behavior and things like that. So again, the best way is to separate yourself. So Caesar Milan, when he decides to bring in a new dog to introduce to his pack, he always tells the owners, no touch, no talk, no eye contact. And that's what I'm talking about when I say separate yourself. Okay. If you're petting the dog that you're living with and that new dog comes up, chances are that your dog could possibly get jealous of the other dog, and so no petting for a while, and allow them to sort of explore their fun together, or the potential play drive together would be the optimum way to get any dogs to get along. So it's not impossible, but like I said before, don't be too hard on yourself on trying to get two dogs to get along. Sometimes it's very difficult to get two dogs to see eye to eye, and sometimes it's a breeze. So, all right. Thanks for your question. Okie dokie, we got a question live. Okay. Let's see. Hi, Jacqueline. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Unpredictable bursts of barking / charging at stimuli. Example. Dog standing still, child runs by them, and they explode into a sudden, anxious bark and charging. Could be kids, sudden movements, someone standing up. Best ways to address this. Someone was telling me about a young 6-month-old puppy doing this, but it's so common in rescue dogs. Okay, so yeah, maybe either it could be, you could be right. It could be the dog has sort of a impulsive prey drive, which means things and objects going away from him could cause the impulsive behavior, or it could just be kids. You'll learn it more if say an adult walks by and the dog's fine, and then another kid walks by and the dog's not fine. What you want to be able to do is teach the dog how to listen to you very well in that situation. That's the best way to get the dog to open up the possibility of being able to control that impulse. Because right now the dog doesn't, or feels it necessary to take control when something like that happens. And you want to be able to, because it's a behavior that is bad, you want to be able to show the dog that it's not necessary for the dog to be doing so. And so helping the dog listen to you before it listens to itself, so to speak, is going to be key. 6 months is pretty young, and also pretty drastic that at 6 months it has this level of reactivity. But that's how I would approach it, and any dog for that matter, and that's reactive to anything. Give the dog something to do. All right. Thanks for your question. Feel free to ask another one. I get seeing nervous body language, but in this situation, it's sudden and the moment it happens. So if you are noticing the nervous body language, that's when you want to reinforce what you want the dog to do. Stay. So you take the dog out. You can put him in a down, keep him in a stand, or sit, doesn't matter. And the dog must stay by your side. And I don't mean stay by you holding the dog back. So there should be no tension when the dog decides. There should be no tension when you're doing this. But as the stimuli is presented, then you would say stay. And if the dog doesn't stay, then you say no, and you repeat what you want from the dog. And then in time, the dog will start to react less and less because you are there for the dog, being the dog's advocate in that situation. And also watch your distance. Don't get too close. If the dog needs more space, then give the dog more space. But just read the dog and their eyes. Their eyes will never lie. The dog will always look at what it's trying to get at. It will never not. If it does, then something's wrong with that dog mentally. And yes, yeah. So watch the dog's eyes and then watch the dog's ears. You want to get to a point where the dog starts to become curious. And then once you get to that point, after some guidance, the dog will start to try and sniff like this because the dog becomes interested. That's a good step when it comes to teaching a dog something. All right. So that's really about it. I could go on and on. Sorry, I meant it as a sudden change from relaxed and okay to crazy anxious barking. These people aren't able to pick up nervous tension because it happens so quickly from 0 to 10. I'm thinking they're missing things though, because it's once again, dogs never go after something they don't look at, and if they're looking at it, then you know that they're not indifferent to it, and they're not okay with it, especially if they've already shown you that they're going to go after the stimuli. So the eyes will never lie. Watch the eyes. All right? Thanks for the conversation. Feel free to ask another question. Okay, where are we at? Sorry if I skipped some stories, some questions. Okay. Next question. All right, what's your advice on breaking the habit for yelling at the dogs who only listen to no when it's in a nasty tone? So that means you'll have to use other ways to get the dog to listen to your casual no. If only the nasty no works, then that means that the dog only takes you seriously when you do that. And you want to be able to get your dog to take you seriously just as the warning, your warning, hey, just a casual, hey, no. And so you want to use your tools, your body language, your leadership to help your dog be convinced of your casual no as opposed to the nasty tone. I think a lot of people really read that you should never raise your voice with a dog, and I'll be the first to tell you that that's not true. There are dogs that are, again, very impulsive, and if you're whispering at them the whole time, you know that if you have a dog like that, then you know that doesn't work. So just view it as a form of as a level of pressure, just like they would do to each other. If a growl doesn't work, then a bark might work, but they're raising their tone. If a bark doesn't work, then unfortunately sometimes a bite works. And so they kind of go up. But we always want to work back towards casual conversation when the dogs are listening. But, no dog is going to be perfect. And so you will have to raise your voice, and that's okay. It's not damaging to the dog at all. The more you can use your common tone, the better and more consistent you're being with your dog, and in your attempt to convince your dog that they should take your word for it. That's a great question. All right. Next question. Q says, hey, I'm late. Hope Atlanta was fun. It was definitely fun. Sammy is doing great on the treadmill. Thanks for the video. You're welcome. I hope Sammy's doing very well, because he was a handful. He was a very rambunctious, energetic lab, but he was awesome. So that's good to hear, because this weather is crazy up here. And so that treadmill may be a useful tool for some of you guys who are in the north and getting hammered by all this snow, getting a lot of snow and cold temperatures. All right. Next question. We got a question on YouTube. Okay. Hey, we have a 3-month-old Vizsla that is relentless in going after our much larger, older dog. Okay. Dog has started gnashing his knees. Will this escalate? It only will escalate if you allow it to escalate. If you think something's unfair, then intervene by any means. Um, let the dog, let the dog, play. And if it seems fair that your older dog is playing, and then that's fine. But when it becomes unfair to you, um, and use your judgment, then you stop it when you see fit, just like kids. If you think rough housing is going to get too rough, then you stop it, obviously. Or the other thing is you let them work it out, as long as it doesn't get very ugly. Here's a little tip when it comes to dogs getting to know each other. A little rule: when you're socializing and dogs are getting to know each other, there should be no vocal play. You should stop that. Safe to say, in general, you should stop that, because sometimes vocal is the first is a first step to taking it overboard. So you want to go ahead and intervene if ever it gets vocal, or it just seems unfair, like you said. Like I said. So just watch it. Use your judgment. Use your instincts. If it seems like your 3-month-old is too much, then I would put a leash on the dog and give the 3-month-old a break, and also give your older dog a break. But maybe eventually that older dog, hopefully in a safe way, teaches the dog some respect. If the bullying is what's going on. All right. Thanks for your question. Feel free to ask another one. Okay. Let's see what else we got. Okay. Elizabeth asked, how do we stop our dog from whining and barking when we leave? He never barks at any other time, and he's fine once we are out of sight. But anytime we even turn a car on, he's pacing and whining and eventually barks as we pull away. So what you're going to have to do is teach the dog to do something before you leave. That will calm his nerves. That will make sure the dog learns how to control that impulsive anxiety. Make sure, first and foremost, that anxiety is addressed with exercise. So exercise always helps in getting dogs to control their impulses much easier than no exercise. And I know, again, if you're in Wisconsin or anywhere up north, exercise is kind of hard to come by. But find a way, and then the dog will settle much quicker. But again, you want to give the dog something to do. So what I would do, something simple as tell the dog to go lay down before I leave. That's it. And then make sure the dog actually does that. But don't try and do it when you leave. Get the dog to do it more in just common everyday day-to-day stuff. Get the dog to understand that when you say go lay down, the dog actually does that. And then you can start adding stimuli that may cause that anxiety to manifest. So if you can go ahead and tell your dog, go lay down, and they actually do so, good. Now let's try getting ready, but don't leave. Try getting ready, tell the dog to go lay down in that circumstance, and then don't leave. But act like you're going to leave. And then give that a few times. Here's the other key. When you come back and that dog is at all excited to see you, you don't want to reinforce that excitement, because you're then showing the dog that it's a big deal that you've been gone. And what that does is feed into that anxiety when you leave. So when you come home from somewhere, tell the dog to go lay down right away. And do not pet the dog. Try and get the dog to be calm when you walk in the house. Because again, you're going to get what you reinforce, you're going to get what you pet. So you walk in that door, you pet that dog, you're just reinforcing that same behavior that provokes the pacing and the whining and the barking as well. So, bottom line, start getting the dog to do more things inside that you want it to do, um, because what you're doing is building tools for the for that dog to deal with that anxiety. All right. Hope that helps. Thanks for your question, and feel free to ask another one. All right, let's keep it rolling. So I just oh, we got another question. Okay, here's a fun one. 99% of dogs, after being told to sit, will approach their owner. Stop right in front of them, then sit. Any ideas on how to cut out the approaching part? Getting them to stay 10 feet away, for instance. I know this happens because they were taught to sit while standing right in front of the human. Basically you have to have a good stay command, um, and so in the sports world they call it just the frontal sit. What they have to do in the sport that I used to participate in is get the dog to sit 30 yards away from you, and how we start with that basic skill is getting the dog to sit, put him on leash, get the dog to sit in a particular spot, like a marker. Just pick something, it doesn't matter. And then tell the dog to stay. You can either hold the leash or not, depending on what you want. But then walk to the end of the leash, watch the dog, reinforce stay, and I would go ahead and put my hand out like this when you say it. Stay, stay, and then just watch the dog. If the dog is on its toes, reinforce stay. I don't care how many times you have to say it. Go ahead and tell the dog to stay. Eventually, once you reach the end of the leash, pause for 5 seconds, and then you can click and treat. And then add more time, 5 more seconds. Many ways to teach the sit stay, but that's one way that I would recommend. It's a pretty easy approach, and it's pretty effective. But I would tell you that the most reliable way to get a dog to stay is to get the dog to realize it has to stay for you and not the treat. And that's what a lot of people struggle with. So use your leash, use a tool, and reinforce stay a lot as you see the dog trying to maybe come up to you. And yeah, see what you get. Appreciate your question. Okay, next question. Can you talk about responsible e-collar training? I know some people are very against it. It's been an excellent tool. Yeah, responsible e-collar training. Obviously, what I tell a lot of people is it's not a, real briefly, it's not a tool to punish. It's a tool to be used in a wide array of commands and only to proof them. So first and foremost, the dog should learn. The dog should know what you're telling the dog without the e-collar very efficiently before you put the e-collar on and proof it. If that's not the case, you could send the dog into confusion and then get the dog to become stressed, and that may mean you will need some really good training to get out of that. You want to try and avoid that as much as possible. Introducing the e-collar, how you do it is very important too. There's a really good, slow way to do so. And I have a video on YouTube on how to introduce that. But I should say the e-collars that we use are have 100 levels, so you can be very sensitive to the sensitive dog, and you can be as strong as you need to be with the strong dog, because some dogs just have a crazy, crazy tolerance, and the e-collar means nothing to them. And then you have dogs that are will will freak out over a vibration. Um, and so what's good about these e-collars is that you can be as subtle, more subtle than what the vibration can do to some dogs. Uh, and so you want to again try to avoid. Well, maybe sometimes it's not. It's unavoidable to the dog who is a headstrong, or not a headstrong, but a dog who goes into its own head very quickly. A highly stressed dog. It's very likely that they may um, go into confusion, like what's this, what was that, if they're, say a dog is, very sensitive to flies landing on them. There are dogs out there who are just kind of anal about that, very sensitive to touch and things like that. Those dogs may again be sent into a little bit of confusion, but if you've done your foundation work, which means teaching the dog what you want the dog to do enough, then you being there when they get confused, working them through that is the best way to help the dog to positively associate the e-collar with what you want the dog to do, and to avoid any further confusion. But there's a lot of people who get the e-collar because the dog is not listening and doing something that they shouldn't. And the tool can be used in a much more responsible, efficient way. So that's it. That's enough about that. Thanks for your question. Okay. Any recommendations on how to get a dog to calmly walk over when you give the dog the come command? Sammy comes running and doesn't care who's in his way, which is not such a good thing with the kids. I don't want him to knock anybody over. So I would go ahead and say, if you're using treats in that regard, then you don't want to use treats. You want to wean them off those treats, because knowing Sammy, he is a very food-driven dog, and that could possibly be the reason why he's coming charging. The other thing is you can teach the dog slow. And so what you want to do is just use your body language. Go towards the dog, at a pace that'll work, and say slow or easy. I use those two commands with my dogs. Easy, easy, easy. And they know kind of to, relax a little bit. So make it less exciting for the dog to come to you too. If you're petting the dog and celebrating like a party, then you may want to tone that down a little bit. It's always good, again, that your dog comes to you, but you got to read the dog. If you want your dog to behave in a certain way, then you almost have to want the dog to match your energy, as opposed to getting the dog more excited when it comes. Because that's how we taught him. It's very easy to get a lab to be excitable, and so you want to be able to slow him down by making it less excitable to come to you. And also try to see if you can maybe wean off the anticipation of the come. So give more time in between your come exercises. So if you have the dog in a down and you walk away, let's see if you can get the dog to lay down on its chin and sort of forget about what you want from the dog in that moment. Because if Sammy's looking at you with all the intent of coming running, then you want to wait that out. And so what you can do is put him in a down and sort of just sit on the couch, or get on your phone. And I say get on your phone because the dog reads your indifference and responds to that. You keep your eye on the dog, obviously, every now and then, but and then you can also change your tone. Your tone is important. If I'm saying Sammy, come, then sometimes that may provoke that high energetic come. But if I'm saying, Sammy, come, then again, that may help. All right? Thanks for your question. Yeah, Sammy's a cute dog. So I don't blame you for trying to keep it a celebration. Okay? Thanks for your question. All right, let's keep it rolling here. What do you think about what? All right. I know you support the mini educator for e-collar training. What about invisible fencing for 2 dogs? Brands, range. We live on about 1 acre. Good question about the range. I would say the range is up to you. How much you really want them to, how much freedom you really want them to have in your yard. I'm not going to, it maybe depends on the size of the dog, temperament of the dog, and breed of the dog. Yes, but I am in support of the electric fence. That's fine. But I would say there's a couple of factors that would determine how much space I give them. For example, neighbors, and then neighbors with kids, and then neighbors with other dogs, and things like that. You may want to, shorten that distance up so that, they can't get as close to your neighbors, depending on how your dogs are with the neighbors. They may be fine, they may not be, but it's just another factor. So thanks for your question. Feel free to ask another one. Okay. Next question. Elizabeth says, any ideas for getting our dog to stop fixating on his food? We make him lay down and wait to eat, but he drools and stares and gets so worked up, whiting. So I would say, when I have a dog that's pretty obsessive about that, you can, I would say, to make it a little easier on the dog, feed the dog half of its food and then put the food up somewhere, like on a counter or something. Make sure the dog can't get to it on the counter. But I would say one of the things that I do if I see a dog that's just way too amped up about feeding is I'll just, I usually feed dogs in the crate, so I'll just put it on top of the crate and go sit down and chill for a minute until I get the dog to lay down completely and sort of almost forget about, being fed. But if it's a really, really food hound, you can make it easy. Just feed the dog half so that it's not ultimately just like, sitting over there starving his butt off. But start controlling the dog. Start teaching the dog to control that impulse and you're gonna kind of meet him halfway sort of deal. So feed the dog half of what you feed it. Put some more food in the bowl. Put it on the counter, and then see if you can wait the dog out. Obviously, if the dog tries to go after the food, definitely correct him for it. No, go lay down or something like that. But once the dog actually then, goes and lays down and forgets about it, then go get the food and put it in front of the dog. And try that for maybe 3 or 4 times. And then you can try it with a whole bowl of food because he'll start to know the game. He'll start to know that any behavior that he's presenting is not going to get him what he ultimately wants. And sometimes it will take a little bit, sometimes it won't. And so that's what you can do. Feed the dog half of what you're feeding it already, and put the rest of it on the counter or somewhere where the dog can see it but can't get to it. And then let the dog choose to go lay down and relax. Once the dog chooses to go lay down and relax, that's the behavior you want to reinforce and teach the dog how to get what it wants. So therefore, that's when you teach. That's when you give the dog the food. All right. Great question. Feel free to ask another one. Let's see if we got questions on YouTube here. Okay. All right. Let me make sure I got all the questions. All right, we'll ask a couple more. You're welcome. Bali says, my one dog has to be in front of my other two before leaving the house or jumping in the car. Do you believe in maintaining pack order? I'll leave it up to you. If it doesn't, to me, since I'm a sort of a very, I would say, a competitive person, I think that has to do with it. I will sort of make them wait on an equal playing field as opposed to one always having to be number one. But I'll leave that up to you. You know, if it doesn't, if you don't think it spills over into any other bad behavior, then who cares? But if it does, then that's one thing that maybe you want to address. So it really depends on, you know, I'll say this. I never let any dog do any behavior that seems to be out of their control. If they seem obsessive about it, which means they have to do it every single time, then I will intervene. Because reactivity is obviously a prequel to other and can lead to other bad behaviors. All right. Question on YouTube. A jumping puppy. He's 51 pounds at 6 months. I've done body block or a knee to chest with off command. He just gets excited. Okay. Well, you may have to use another tool that could work as good as any other tool. If he's getting more excited, then you may actually you could even stay with your approach, but be more patient with that approach. So after you tell the dog no and you lift your knee, then I would stand there like a tree. And I would continue to let the dog do the behavior. And then I would continue to do what you do. Let the dog see that it doesn't get you anywhere. Okay, so that's one way of convincing the dog that this behavior doesn't get the dog what it wants. But if you give up too soon, if the dog's stubbornness to get what it wants outlasts your stubbornness to get the dog to do what you want, then the dog is going to win and continue to do the behavior. So I would say stand your ground, become stoic, and stay consistent. No matter how long it takes, you can nip it in the bud. If you set your mind to saying, I'm going to do this for 10 minutes. And if after 10 minutes it doesn't work, then maybe we can try a different approach. But I literally will start a timer and do what I just suggested and let the dog decide that it is not anything that you want to do or it's not going to get you anywhere. All right? That's a great question. And thank you for it. Feel free to ask another one. Okay. Tasha says, what do you suggest for a dog who is very anxious and gets aggressive at the vet? Any tips for that? Yes, the dog needs to be able to listen to you more at home. Okay, you can teach your dog how to get over a lot of fears, a lot of phobias, a lot of anxiety about how, when, or how you treat the dog at the home. The dog must listen to you while you're at home. More control in the house, when it's very convenient for you not to have any control, is going to be the key on getting control in other places. If you don't have control in the home, you dang sure ain't going to have control anywhere, any other environment. All right? And so get more control in the house, and you'll start to see that your dog listens to you in the environment. The environment is secondary to how the dog listens to you and your leadership. Okay, so all things can be overcome much easier if your dog listens to you at a high level when it's just you and him or you and her. All right? Thanks for your question. Okay, Molly says, so to correct him, have him wait and allow the other dogs to leave the house first daily. Yes. At first, I corrected his behavior because he's rude, but then I read that it's important that to allow the alpha to be first, or it will continue to, it will confuse others. I don't agree with that. I just stick to the basics. I'm a very basic trainer, and I have very basic solutions because I think other trainers and in the industry tries to get away from the basics because they haven't stuck enough time within the basics to see that the basics just work. So here's a basic rule of thumb that you can keep with you with your dogs in regards to your pack. I decide what happens. I'm the pack leader. They are um, they are subjective to what I tell them to do. This will not confuse them at all. They just need to listen to me no matter what. That's it. That's where I keep it. And everything else, again, is secondary. If you feel like the behavior is rude, then stop the behavior. And I certainly have stopped. You know, when I was working with the dog daycare, there was 30 dogs coming in and out of gates and stuff like that in a pack. And um, one thing that I sort of reinforce is that calmness will get you what you want. So the dogs who are sitting nice gets to go through the gate, period. And the dogs who weren't, they have to wait. So calmness gets you what you want first. That's just how I feed them too. If you're calm, you get fed. If you're calm, you get let out. If you're not getting let out yet until you're calm. No matter who's alpha or anything like that. All right. Thanks for your question. Okay, hard question. Scared foster dogs. You told me to withhold affection, which kills me. How to get over the emotion of the dog's fear. Uh, how to get over the emotion is keeping in mind that you have to do what you have to do in order to get the dog over what you want the dog to get over. It is real easy to try and comfort the dog, but you don't. But what you don't want to do is reinforce um, the the fear and anxiety. And one of the things that helps me is I don't want you to be afraid of anything that you shouldn't be afraid of, and I'm going to show you that. And sometimes it takes that step away, that indifference, to sort of get that result. So the dog can learn to be comfortable, independent of your affection and stuff like that. I know it's really hard for people to even just watch their kids go to college. You know what I'm saying? But it's necessary. And kids are fearful of that. And so we don't hold them back from that. You know, we help them become more independent by pushing them to do things that just because you're scared of it doesn't mean you should be, and you can't get over it. All right. Thanks for your question. Feel free to ask another one. He's definitely the least calm. We call him Bugatti because he's just fast. Fast eating, fast running, fast paced. He will wait and stay and listening the best. But once you allow him to go, he's going full throttle. Yeah, so I would definitely do what I suggest. I would teach the dog to be last, and maybe give the dog some space between the two. I've seen dogs like that. They're awesome because they're usually the most obedient and smart. Um, but it's tough given the breed as well. So I wouldn't be too tough on yourself in that regard. But if the dog is smart, like we already know he is, then the dog can learn to adjust behavior more in the way that you want. But some dogs are just going to be live in that adrenaline 1 to 100 or 0 to 100 world. Um, but there are things that you can do to kind of push them to slow down a little bit. All right. Thanks for the conversation. Okay, Susan asks, my Chow Chow is very shy towards men and some women. He prefers watching them afar and not go near them. What can I do to help him? Well, first and foremost, whenever you're dealing with a dog who's shy, um, you'll have to create some space within the dog. I just had my neighbor just got a new Australian Shepherd, and the dog didn't take to the husband, the husband, and the dog took to the wife much easier. Um, and so what I told the wife was, when the dog shows fear and runs to you, push the dog away, um, and continue to do that. Therefore, the dog's need to be affectionate will override its fear because it has to, or it's forced to by you telling the dog to go away. It's forced to say, I still want to be pet. Let me see if this girl will go pet me. All right, that's what I do with human aggressive dogs too. I really make them understand that the world doesn't revolve around you, and you're an afterthought, or you accommodate to us and not the other way around. And then the dog starts to become more humble. So in those situations, be a little, show a little tough love. All right. Thanks for your question. Feel free to ask another one. Okay, folks. Let's see. Maybe one more question. We're getting to the end of our time together. Okay. How do I get my dog to start barking? All right, last question, because there's a lot of people who could be helped by this. How do I get my dog to stop barking at the window, mainly when other dogs walk by? So real quick, you have to give the dog something to do, and you have to get the dog to take your word for it. So if you say no or go lay down, your dog should do that. If it doesn't, then you have to add a tool like a leash or some sort of collar, or some sort of device to get the dog to respect your words more so than its own impulsive behavior to try and control what's going on outside. So without those dogs being outside, start teaching go lay down, or put a leash on the dog and tell the dog to go lay down to get the dog to relax. Again, very basic answer, but it is a very good solution. Your dog should not be barking when you're at home and are able to see that the dog shouldn't be barking. Okay? Take control of that barking. Teach the dog, give the dog a job to do when it's just you two, and you'll see the dog listen to you much more than it wants to listen to itself. All right. Thanks for your question. Okay, folks, that's it. I appreciate you guys stopping by, listening to me talk. It really helps me. So I thank you for that. Please give me a thumbs up or a heart if you are watching, and we'll see you guys next week. Appreciate you guys watching. Bye-bye.